Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our October A Garden in Every Season tour. If this is Tuesday, October 5th at 11:30 in the morning, I should be there in the comments of this post saying hello and getting ready to chat with you all about the mysteries we are going to be solving today. My name is Paige Engelbrechtson, and I work for the Highlands Botanical Foundation, which supports research and education in the Southern Appalachians. And the vast majority of that takes place here at the Highlands Biological Station through programs like this one. Now, as you may be able to tell, a lot is changing in the garden right now. We are definitely on our way into fall, and that has provided plenty of fodder for our program. The Garden in Every Season tour is designed to highlight what's been changing in the botanical garden since the last time that we talked in early September. And I'm really excited about today's program because to me, it's a bit of a murder mystery. As I've been walking through the garden, taking a look, trying to figure out over the last 2 weeks what we'll focus on today, clearly leaf color change is a big thing that's going on now. But beyond just the regular color change itself, I've also been noticing that the leaves are acting almost like crime scenes. That as I'm observing them, sometimes the colors, sometimes the physical damage is telling me that in the past, whether in the far summer or just over the last few days, a crime has taken place on that leaf. And so it's a bit like walking through the forest with a series of whodunits or murder mystery parties going on every single leaf, or a significant number of them anyway. And so today, I thought it would be appropriately spooky if we walked through the garden and took a quick look at a couple of these different crime scenes and really put on our Sherlock hats and attempted to solve them. Some of this will be drawing on the expertise of other folks here at the station, and some of this will be my conjecture. So I invite you, as the wonderful sleuths I know you all are, to likewise join me in pondering the great mysteries revealed by careful observation of the world around us. We're actually going to stop here at the entrance to the botanical garden because this tree is the site of our first crime scene. It is, in fact, our first victim. So, any ideas what identity we should give it? As I'm observing this particular plant, I notice it has a fairly slender trunk, and the leaves are quite sizable for scale. This is my hand. They're quite broad, but they're very long. In fact, they're pretty delicate, all things considered. And the twigs and branches are pretty robust for the very end of a limb. That, combined with a few of, perchance, those hot pink fruits you can see up there, tells me that this is one of our deciduous magnolias. It is a close cousin to the two species you'll find most commonly here on the plateau, which are the cucumber and Fraser magnolia. This is actually a variety called umbrella magnolia or umbrella tree. And this is the crime scene. So we've identified our victim, and now we need to observe the clues. What tells us what particular crime has taken place here? Well, when I compare personally the color, I notice that unlike the majority of leaves on the other stems of this tree, these leaves are variegated or have changing color. And in fact, this is a phenomenon you are likely familiar with if you have variegated ornamental plants in your landscaping. For example, hostas. The same kind of alternating colored pattern. I see everything from a very pale green to a more spring green to these dark greens. So our major clue is the variety and unusual patterning of color changes. What could be the suspect? What could be behind this particular crime scene? Well, if your answer is that perhaps this is the tree preparing to lose its leaves for the fall, I would say that is certainly a reasonable conjecture, especially at this point in the season. However, I have insider information. In preparing for this program, I sought out the expertise of Sonia Carpenter, project coordinator for the foundation, and she reminded me of something that I had forgotten or failed to observe, which is that these leaves display variegation all summer, meaning that it's not preparing for fall that's behind these color changes. It must be something else, something that does not harm the leaf to the extent that it dies or the plant drops it. And therein lies the question, what is the suspect? Well, she had a culprit in mind, called a Mosaic virus. Now, when I was looking for this, I found evidence that perhaps vegetables in your garden may suffer from the same fate, which is simply a virus that in the course of its life cycle happens to produce this mottled coloration on a leaf. And I have not observed it elsewhere in the botanical garden, which may be because I'm not looking closely enough, or it may be due to this plant coming to the botanical garden with this virus if we received it from elsewhere, or the virus being specific enough that it's unable to infect other plants in our botanical garden, as this is one of the only a few umbrella trees that we have here. So we have a suspect for the crime, we have a conclusion, and we have more mysteries to uncover. And uncover more mysteries we will as we head deeper into the botanical garden. Keep your eyes peeled. The signs are all around us. Right, we have arrived at our next crime scene. May I present to you the victim? Any suggestions as for identification? Certainly a small tree. And what gives it away for me when I am observing it is the asymmetrical scalloped nature of the leaves. This is a tree known as witch hazel. Now, you may have locked on to the most distressing damage that's been done to the leaves the tender parts between the veins eaten away by some unknown entity. But I must say, while that is in fact a crime scene, it is not the one that I am hoping to discuss with you today. In fact, the evidence lies here. A minor, but still prominent, blemish present on both sides of the leaf. What do you observe? When viewing it, I notice the conical nature of the top projection and the slight indent in the bottom. It appears to be connected through the leaf, and reminds me of how occasionally plants will form a body around an irritant, much the way that pearls form in oysters or burls on trees, and that we call this in the plant world often a gall, G-A-L-L. And there are many sources for galls and what causes them. Everything from wasps to flies to aphids. So in seeing the evidence of a crime, I sought out another expert, Dr. Costa, the executive director of the Highlands Biological Station. And he looked at it and within moments was able to offer an identity for the suspect. This, he said, is the work of an aphid. Had we opened this up in midsummer, we would have found a mother aphid with young nestled in the protection of the gall, safe from predators and the environment. Given the hole at the bottom, it is likely that they have long since departed. But by irritating the plant to create the gall, hopefully they successfully reproduced and made their way out into the world. I will note, if you notice the shape, it does appear to resemble a witch's hat, which seems appropriately thematic for an October program. And in fact, one of the primary aphids in the genus Hormathus is called witch hazel leaf gall aphid. So we have a victim, clues, and finally a suspect. In fact, a specific suspect, which is always pleasing. So a small crime scene, but a fun and notable one nevertheless. For reference, the damage to the leaves is often called skeletonizing and may be induced by insects that are chewing away at the soft portion of the leaf between the much stiffer veins. The identity of this culprit remains unknown. You may or may not be able to hear some of the wildlife that's calling as I'm walking through this part of the garden. I have to tell you, the squirrels have been in fine form recently. So if you're able to come to the botanical garden, keep an ear out for them. We arrive now at our third crime scene, where virtually every leaf on this young tree displays signs of it. How would you identify this victim? I note the characteristic red leaf stems. I also notice the fine teething around the edges of this classically shaped leaf. This particular individual has not yet produced the brilliant red leaves that often also give away its name. But you may know it as a red maple. Now the clues, what do you see? I observe a series of irregular spots and splotches scattered across the top of the leaf. There appeared to be a discoloration in the center, and it makes the leaf quite brittle, as you can see. The discoloration continues on the back of the leaf, although not as strongly. Now, it would appear a great deal of the leaves have suffered to various extents. What could have done this? Who could be to blame for all of this damage? It was at this point that I went in search of answers on my own and dove into a deep body of work produced by horticulturalists and gardeners from across the country, and in fact the world. And I must admit, it was more than a little bit intimidating to realize exactly how much people needed to know about what causes spots on leaves. It's not a question that I had asked myself very frequently before, and yet apparently great detail and great knowledge is needed to accurately solve this crime. I saw mites and bacteria and fungi blamed for various and sundry ailments across trees of all kinds. But on maples, leaves with spots of this variety appear to be suffering from a fungal infection, which makes sense because here in Highlands we've had over 106 inches of rain and we still have most of 3 months left to go. So we have certainly had the kind of wet conditions that would lend themselves to fungi propagating and water sitting on the leaves, which would lend themselves to the leaves being infected. So perhaps it was a fungus that's responsible for these particular blemishes. But it appeared that we need not fret that this amount of damage is minuscule to the tree itself and does not ultimately affect its health, which is excellent, as I have been observing for several weeks now that the maples have been losing leaves well before we even reached cooler temperatures. So perhaps this fungus has been affecting them for weeks now, if not months. I must admit, I remain puzzled by the true identity of the culprit behind these large, dark splotches, and even upon further examination, perhaps these lighter splotches with dark rings around them are from a different suspect. Names such as tar spot, or phylosticta, or anthracnose fungi all swirl around in my head as I try to grapple with the vast body of knowledge that horticulturalist experts must have to identify and deal with these problems. But certainly I solicit your input, oh detectives, following me in this journey. And perhaps we'll need to remain next year and see if it returns. Our final stop on today's tour involves this plant directly in front of me. One that anybody here in Highlands will be intimately familiar with by sight, if not necessarily by name, given its prevalence here in our temperate rainforest. When observing it, I notice it seems to grow in every possible direction to catch as much light as possible. I notice the elongated leaves, which are fairly robust, leathery, substantially lighter on the bottom. I notice the remains of flowers and seeds. I notice the light green leaf stems and the peeling, woody nature of some of this bark. This is our old friend, great rhododendron, also known as rosebay rhododendron. And even a cursory glance has given me 3 or 4 different issues that it has been dealing with. But let us focus on this particular crime scene. What do you notice? Well, upon first closely viewing this kind of damage, I admit I was shocked for 2 reasons. The first is that these leaves are incredibly tough, and that whatever is able to chew through them so readily must have very strong jaws or mandibles to do so. But the second is that I always think of rhododendron as being poisonous, because it is for people. And the symptoms of poisoning are quite distressing, to say the least. But as we have discussed on other tours with other plants, Perhaps what is so fatal to us humans is not so difficult for other animals to deal with. So unless each organism that has a bite is dropping dead shortly thereafter of the toxins, which would not be selected for, there must be something out there which can readily consume it in such a fashion. So we have our clues. What do we believe our suspect is? Well, for this quandary, I went back to Dr. Costa and solicited his advice, and he informed me that the most likely culprits were beetles. Perhaps caterpillars, as we have dozens upon dozens of species of butterflies and moths here on the plateau, but perhaps also the larvae of other beetles or the adults, as beetles are renowned for having robust mandibles that would be able to chew through the tough cuticle of the rhododendron leaves. Now, it's impossible to say which species in particular. I did not stake out the rhododendron to find out. In fact, I believe the culprits may be long gone at this point because of another thing that I noticed about the leaves. You may have noticed, keen observer, the browning of the leaf around areas of physical damage. And in fact, this pattern continues across any number of other rhododendron leaves as well. Damage followed by this browning, which has small black spots speckled across the top. I believe that what has happened, and this is strictly conjecture, of course, is that one of our beetle friends ate away a bit of the rhododendron and allowed an entry point for a fungus to come into the rhododendron. And that the fungus then spread and the leaf has become damaged to the point that the rhododendron shrub has said, "No longer, you're not helping me out, you're a liability, I shall shed you." And that is why they are turning yellow. Because you may notice a substantial number of leaves on this rhododendron are in fact yellow. And if you're familiar with rhododendrons, this may be a perplexing thought because rhododendrons are evergreen. They retain their leaves through the winter. Why then the yellow? Are all of these leaves so damaged that it must shed them all at once? Are all of these various shrubs preparing to lose all their leaves and die back? Observe carefully where the yellowed leaves are in relation to the stem. Note how the vast majority of them are not on the end of the growth, where the new green or the flower buds are coming from, but in the interior. In fact, often they are the leaves farthest back along a stem, suggesting if rhododendrons grow from the tip, they may be the oldest leaves on that particular branch. And this turns out to be the case, that while rhododendrons are evergreen, their leaves are not eternal. Meaning that as they age and reach a given lifespan or sustain enough damage, the rhododendron sheds them, allowing it to conserve its resources for new growth. So if your rhododendron is yellowing, do not fret. It is not likely to die. It is simply doing as so many other trees of the deciduous nature are doing and preparing for the coming months. So we have identified various clues, various suspects on this particular tree shrub, from blights and fungi to caterpillars to old age. Truly many mysteries on every leaf that we observe. But we have come now to the end of our murder mystery tour. I hope that you have enjoyed coming along with me sleuthing out the answers. If you have suggestions or knowledge, please feel free to let me know. I am always learning, both from you all and from the experts that I have consulted in preparation for this program. And certainly, the more that I know, the more that I will ultimately know. So if you have counter arguments, other suspects, clues I missed, please put them in the chat, and I would love to hear from you. You may have noticed we did not talk about why deciduous trees are changing color. We already have some beginning to show their color here on the edge of Lindenwood Lake. If you are curious, please tune in on Tuesday, I want to say it's the 20th, the third Tuesday in October, and we will be hosting our monthly Nature 101 series all about why and how leaves change color. By then I should have some really good examples of peak foliage change. According to some people, it's coming up on October the 12th, that weekend. So with our current cold snap, we'll see if that holds true. If you are interested in other programs, please check out our e-blasts and subscribe to receive them. It's how you can stay up to date on all of our program offerings, including our knee-high naturalist program. For folks who are in the area with kids ages 3 to 5, we are getting ready to reboot the program safely in accordance with pandemic guidelines. So check out our website for more information. Thank you all again for joining me, and a very special thank you to everybody who has donated to the foundation in support of these programs. This is made possible because I am employed by the foundation, so if you have donated, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you are considering donating, I would strongly encourage you to. But regardless, thank you all for joining me. Please be safe, stay well, and if you have a chance to walk through our botanical garden, please do, as it remains open dawn to dusk year-round. Take care.